SoCalQOL. It is Saturday. And if you're not already out and about doing crazy things and maybe getting your hustle on or spending time with family, friends, yeah, you can hang out with me and listen to this podcast slash watch it on YouTube. But hey, guys, hope everyone's having a good first few weeks of February. I'm not going to go too far into it, but this month, it's only been the second month of the year, but definitely this has been the most challenging of them all so far. Ha ha ha. Uh, I think given the circumstances of just resolutions and just how life goes. You set expectations, you try to shoot for them, and lo and behold, things fall short, and you get out of your rhythm, and you realize vulnerabilities, and then trying to communicate that in a way that's motivative and supportive, and hopefully making other people's lives better, adding value, all that good stuff. So it's an interesting scenario that I feel like I'm in personally with SoCalQOL, but yeah, I'm sure we'll highlight that in the next few podcasts coming up. But what I really wanted to talk about today was a conversation that my wife and I had, and it basically just comes down to the truth, speaking the truth or speaking your truth, and how no matter how you sugarcoat it, no matter how you present it to family, friends, colleagues, coworkers, whoever, employees even, sometimes the truth hurts, and that's really disappointing probably for most, because they feel like they're happy people or they're positive people, and they're really just trying to communicate something that they feel is heavy on their heart, and it's all in love. There's really only so many ways that you can sugarcoat something to the point where the person that you're communicating it to is actually going to get the right idea. And so, yeah, that's kind of the conversation right now. Obviously, we're talking about social wellness. So we're talking about relationships. We're talking about conversations that you have with loved ones and family members or people in your life that you care about. And the idea is to, like we said, add value. That's all we're trying to do here on the SoCalQOL social media platforms. And it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And it's not the easiest thing to try to speak from experience and, if anything, give knowledge to others, but then to have those people take that knowledge and move forward with it. So I'm just going to try to highlight a few different things. Hopefully, it won't go too long. But yeah, so the first kind of scenario I guess I'll bring up is like the casual one, the casual person that you may not really hang out with a lot, but the point is that when you do talk, you're able to kind of, speak your mind and be blunt and, kind of do your soapbox talk. And how, as much as you'd like to do that all the time for that individual, obviously you're going to sound like a broken record. And, what's the best way to continue those types of conversations without kind of seeming overbearing, or kind of like you're poking your nose where you shouldn't be, or you weren't asked to maybe add your own opinion on it, but at the same time you feel like you should say something. So there's a lot of people that I can say that I have made a good impression with. And even though, like I said, I might not see them, or I've, I've been in a workplace setting, I've gained their trust because I helped them do something like, move, or, learn a new trade, or help them, take care of something that they couldn't do by themselves, or whatever the case is. For whatever reason, they feel like my opinion matters in, if not this one scenario, most of the scenarios that they end up getting in a bind and all that good stuff. And in those types of situations, I do feel like you can be a little bit more frank with those people, because it's not like if you say the wrong thing, you're going to have to awkwardly see them or talk to them or talk to their friends, or, it's going to come back to like bite you in the ass. Um, they probably know you enough to know that whatever you do say, it's not because you're, angry at them or disappointed. It's more so because you've already invested in them in that small amount, and you've added so much value to them that they actually were like, well, what else does so and so have to offer me in my life right now, given my scenario, my situation? And so yeah, I feel like you can be a little bit more blunt in those scenarios. Obviously, don't talk down to people. Don't tell them like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you would do that," or think that, or not do something because you're scared, you have fears, or whatever. It's more so, hey, like, just given the conversation that you've started with me, the context that you're describing this situation, and the picture you've painted, this is my initial response. Maybe it's not 100% accurate, but this is what I would do, or this is what I would say you should do. And that's probably like the least amount of resistance that you'll ever get in these type of scenarios, even though you're giving more information than you would to, a coworker or someone that you see a lot more often. You can be a little bit more blunt with that person, because you really have nothing to gain and or lose by saying what you're going to say. And it's not like, they're like an experiment you're trying. I mean, this is probably not the first time that this person's come to ask you your opinion. So those situations, I would say, if you get into those more often than not, that's actually a great place to start trying to communicate the truth. Obviously, we're a wellness services company, so when we communicate things, a lot of times the subject matter isn't the most positive. Basically telling someone that the culture at their organization or their business is toxic, and the reason why you're having so many problems is because you're tolerating a terrible overall standard. And there's no easy way to say that other than, hey, yeah, you're probably just in a really, really bad, stressful environment that you yourself have no control over. And the best thing that you can do is either, look at the financial aspect of it and go, hey, I need to make this money. I need to do this job so that I can pay my bills and eat. Or maybe you're in a situation where you're like, well, I've got a few other job opportunities. I'll pursue those. And, up until I get a job, I'm going to basically think ahead of time and go, I'm going to give my 2-week notice once I get a job offer or I accept a job offer. And because of those stressful environments, I mean, I can't tell you guys enough how just the social wellness side of stress is so bad that if you don't watch those relationships, you don't watch those negative conversations that you have with others, like you will end up having a terrible life, and you will have a really bad reputation. You might not be the kind of person that talks a lot of shit and is in the whole know of the drama of the company or the business or the organization, and yet because you're around those people so much, and you're human, so you're going to have an interest in it for whatever reason, whether it's music or a hobby that you like or a sports team you enjoy following or whatever. The point is that the more you let that stress and that um, just overall type of conversation leads your overall life, it's going to lose your job. But that's definitely something that I think we all kind of forget about when it comes to just who we all are in around others. It's one thing to act a certain way with your spouse or your significant other. It's another thing to have a certain persona and I guess reputation with others that you might see more often than you know um, you would your spouse or someone who lives with you. But yeah, just to come full circle on that, I think that if you are going to start giving your 2 cents in a way because it's a part of, a future business you want to start, or it's just something you feel led to do, maybe you heard a podcast and something really encouraged you to be a better person and to help others. um, Starting off with those types of people. I don't know if you could write a list or just reach out to those people on Instagram, Facebook, social media platforms, just seeing how they are, just see how they're doing, and essentially just recognize the fact that you've had that kind of place in their life, and because of that reason, you can have open conversations and learn more about speaking your truth or speaking uh, uh, facts or knowledgeable information because you have experience in it. And with that, um, you could realize that you actually have more to offer than you thought you did. I think that's kind of the point of this whole topic of discussion, is to realize that you have something of value that other people would probably want to hear. It's not as easy to build at scale, and it's not as easy to do all the time. But with these given individuals, I think it's a great start. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. Um, another type of scenario or person that you know you might end up getting, especially if you're going about like changing your mindset or your mind state on what's worth doing every day, and the reason to be nice or the reason to reach out to people. Because I think that's initially the reason why we get ourselves in these conversations, is because we really just want to help, and we want people to learn from our mistakes, or at least learn from our experience. And sometimes the best way to do that is to have those kind of heart to heart conversations. So let's say that there's a person who you may have known a long time. You may be related to them, or even if you don't talk to them like once a week, there is a spurt of time where you'll end up talking to them a couple times during 1 week every couple of months. And that's different than the first kind of group, because what ends up happening is you end up becoming more invested in a shorter amount of time in whatever they're dealing with, whatever they're planning or whatever they're considering doing with their life. And they know you have an opinion, or you have the experience to kind of shed some light on it and give them some kind of context of like what the future could bring if they pick a certain path. And so in those situations, it's hard, because you can literally change someone from that first section or that first group of people to the second group of people in a matter of like a conversation or a text message. So that type of situation, you really have to kind of tread lightly, because one, it could alter the way you look at that person long term. It could alter the way that you end up, voluntarily putting yourselves in a situation where you would actually give that much information out. Because, let's say you do give your advice, you've been giving your advice, sporadically, and then by the time you become so invested in all the things that they're deciding to do with their life, that you then invest a lot of resources, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of maybe money, like you're going out to eat a lot or go get some drinks, and you've done it multiple times over and over again, to the point where you're like, okay, like this is now the point where we need to basically see some results. We need to see some headway. And all of a sudden they just revert back to something that you've kind of already, you thought you communicated that wasn't really the best route to go. And yet you're yourself, it's not your fault, or you didn't say the wrong thing. This person is just now altering the way that they communicate with you. So it's like, I'm trying to think of something off the top of my head, but all in all, like I think especially when it comes to like something you're interested in, like if you have a hobby, I'll pick golf for example, and this person that you're talking to is really into the sport. If you can't think of golf as one, think of just a sport in general. And you've spent some time doing it, and you have a good amount of years to 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 pull from previous experiences and to give them like a quick, like, hey, this is basically what, this is what it's going to look like if you go this route, which is the route I would go, because it's kind of like the win-win of the situation versus trying to, trying to, let's say, learn the sport on your own, or work with people that aren't as knowledgeable, maybe other amateur players, versus going to some kind of league. Even if it's an adult league, it's an adult league that has, tons of people that have already done it, or really just have a passion for it and have learned a lot in recent time to learn the sport with you, and learn it together. And so yeah, I think, when you get into that scenario and all of a sudden, like, it's gone from just a casual conversation or text message or, whatever, to then like you've actually talked about it like a dozen times. And then the one thing you said in the first thing was like, hey, don't, probably the best thing to do would be to pursue this, and this. If this is where you want to end up, if this is the kind of scenario you want, like, then this is where you need to go. And then, you go all invested into it mentally, really. I mean, maybe there's no real physical investment, but mentally you've gone there and back with them so many times that all of a sudden they do the polar opposite of what you've thought you were communicating. And then somehow, some way, you partnered with them in it to where you're like, well, hey, like, I'm definitely down to like go with you, support you from the sidelines, and basically be there to help you. And now that they've dragged you into a place where you don't want to be there, that that's not the way you would want to do it, and you just feel like it's going to be a big waste of time. So now that you've invested all this energy and this brain power into a scenario that you don't want to be in because you've already done it before, or you just whatever, but now you're kind of stuck, and you thought you were speaking your mind and communicating correctly to this other individual, and yet now here you are, weeks later, months later, maybe, and now you're, the light at the end of the tunnel has exploded, and you're now like around, just hell on earth. So in that moment, sometimes it's good. It's a good idea to pull the reins back, to go, okay, well, I learned from that experience, at least with this individual. Now this individual has now taken what you thought that they trusted you in, and you thought that they were partnering with you, but it ended up being like a consulting thing. Like, hey, I really want to know your opinion, but at the end of the day, you're just my little consultant, and I'm actually probably not going to do anything you say, and make you feel like you wasted your time, but you're my consultant, so who gives a shit? It's like, it's like the last thing in the world that you want to hear as a consultant, is that you're going to do the polar opposite of what you've been talking about for weeks and months. And so that's why you got to pull the reins back. And you love this person, you really, believe that they're a good person, and you still want to be a part of their life, but there is no way in hell that you're going to invest that much time again into a conversation, because you don't want it to end up the way it is, and unless the person actually comes back full circle on their own and goes, hey, I really want to apologize, because you actually did have a lot of things to say, and I did take your opinion at heart, and I'm sorry that it ended up the way it did. Obviously, it probably won't happen until after the events that occur, as far as what you were talking about and why you were talking about the conversation. The dust has settled. You finally end up having a conversation that, they're like, hey man, like I noticed you've been like kind of passive and less invested in our conversations ever since whatever happened. And like, was it because of like me choosing to do something else? And you kind of just go, well, yeah, I mean, I don't want to force you to do anything you don't want to do. But when you ask someone's opinion so many different times, and then all of a sudden it's like you treated me as if, it was just like a casual thing. Like, you don't really know me, and and I didn't invest all this time, resources, energy. Like, maybe you reached out to some sports people that you knew, and you told them that this guy's stellar and he's awesome and he really wants to get involved, and you kind of put your reputation on the line. Even if it was something as small as like, my friend wants to join a adult league, whatever. It's like, it sucks, because you're like, well, great. So now I have to always have that other conversation with the other person that I thought was going to help you do something. And it's going to end up being, maybe it's not a big deal, but for whatever reason, it rubs you the wrong way, and it's something you care about. And, like I said, until that person comes back, which they might not ever do, but you're going to end up loving them from afar in that situation. And just, like I said, pull the reins back. Don't voluntarily put in your 2 cents, because you know what could happen. You know that you're going to invest some amount of information and give, somewhat of a helping hand. And then it's going to end up, they're going to bite you. They're going to, bite the hand that feeds them. And think of it like, and shrug it off. Like, oh, I mean, they tried to help, but that's not what I wanted. And sometimes that's actually not the reason why you do things. You do it because, it's a partnership. It's a mutual kind of agreement that when you're friends and you're trying to help each other get to a certain goal, you're going to consider their opinion above other people, or other strangers or consultants or whatever, because you're the friend. And it's actually better to do life with someone in a way that might not be best suited for just the individual of the mutual relationship, but at the end of the day, it's better because the other person's in your life. And that's kind of, why we have friendships and relationships with other people that we love. Is, life wouldn't be good, or you see your life being very, very different if they weren't in it. So that's why, we have friends and family that we keep around, is because they add value to our lives, positivity, less stress, all that stuff. And then what ends up turning around, though, is if the situation goes the way it does, now every time you talk to the person, it's going to feel like, oh God, it's going to be another stressful conversation, or something that is not going to end up, the way, I would invest into the relationship with. And then you're, shit out of luck. So, I'm going to try to bring up at least one more kind of group. And this one's, a little bit more closer to the chest, but, like I know there's people out there that, whether it's someone you mentor, maybe it's a younger brother, sister, maybe it's, another family member that looks up to you as a mentor, or, if you're a teacher or student, that you have, and they, they know they have a problem, they have a problem. Maybe it's not like super obvious, but at the end of the day, like, you're both kind of on the same page, because they've communicated, a reason to be concerned on their own end. And you've expressed the fact that, like, hey, like, I kind of know what you're going through. I had that problem or that issue or that substance abuse or whatever. And I'm always here to help. Like, I'm here. Like, I'm motivated and dedicated to you being a better person, having a better quality of life. And so, like, we just need to figure out a way for you to get to where you want to be, but we need to be realistic. We need to make a routine that's sustainable and something that's attainable. We don't want to set you up for failure and have you do it the way I did it, and then, you not be successful in it. And then all of a sudden, you're just like, oh, it's over. I don't, I'm never going to do whatever. So that type of situation is interesting. I think it's the most, it really comes down to the individual. It comes down to, well, you yourself as well, but the individual that you're working with, you're talking it through with. And sometimes you're gonna have to try multiple things. You're gonna have to try having multiple conversations. It's probably gonna be the one thing that you end up talking about for years. And yeah, you could condemn, and you could try to make someone feel like, I don't know, they're an idiot, but I don't know when that's ever worked. I've never felt good about someone telling me I'm stupid or dumb or, but I am receptive to, criticism as long as it's coming from someone I trust. So, with that being said, you may have to have multiple conversations to the point where, nothing is necessarily done, nothing is not necessarily like switched or put into motion, but the idea is that like they know you're there. So those types of situations where it's someone, like I said, close to your heart, you know, and they just mean a lot regardless of if they're, in your life every day, or you only see them a couple times a year, or at, family functions or whatever. And yeah, I think the best thing to do in those types of situations, especially with the truth, is to definitely play the long game. Think of it like a marathon. Be super duper patient, because that's probably the worst thing about the truth, is that a lot of times it's it's going to take a long time to get to where you think they could be. Too many times do we, start a conversation with someone that it's going to take so long to see the end game, have the end game, or however you want to put that. But we go into it like, oh, we have to spiel out all the information right away, and that's just going to solve the problem. No, 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 no. Like, you need to mold it. You need to cultivate the conversation over multiple conversations, multiple meetups, multiple family functions or events, or work days, whatever the case may be. But it is ends up being more creative than it is and experimental, like I said, than just black and white. It's A plus B equals C. It's not going to be the case. It might be A plus B equals D divided by E, which then over G plus H, and then parentheses, X times, Y, close parentheses. Then now you do the math. It's like, it's going to be a lifelong thing. And if you're in it for the right reasons, like, you won't worry about the the process, because it's all about the end result. And so in those moments, you really have to cultivate that mentality. Otherwise, you're probably going to get really super frustrated. You might ruin a relationship that never needed to be ruined, because all you want to do is help the person. And it's sometimes hard to watch people fail or be in the same situation that they keep complaining to you about. But there's a certain type of tough love, even if it's a family friend or whatever, through your spouse or someone that you're really close to. You might have that like third party opinion, to where your significant other, your spouse, your close friend, that the other person through, can be super blunt, aggressive, like black and white, and then you're kind of there to basically play devil's advocate in a good and bad way. Compliment the person that's close to you, but also see it from the other person's perspective, and just kind of like lighten the tension. um but like, once again, there's a long game to the truth in that way. And all of these groups, though, are all important to have. All these types of people are important to have in a culture, in a workplace environment, in your family life. Um, if you're a big, person who believes in like the neighborhood parties, and you're going to juggle these types of people, and they might jump in between the groups. And so, the reason that I think the truth is definitely important, but what's even more important than the truth is how you package it, is how you communicate it. And just because you're right doesn't mean you should just flat out say something. Doesn't mean that the other person on the receiving end of whatever you have to say deserves to be talked down to, is told, that they're stupid or made to be, maybe you don't even say that, but they feel that way. You need to be sensitive to those things. So really need to make sure that you know who you're talking to, what type of group they fit in when it comes to this conversation, and also just where your place is in their relationship with you. And yeah, I've definitely had to shift a few people from one group to another, even just this year, given the fact that I'm communicating so many more things about wellness in my own life, to the point where I actually, yeah, I've had to like, push people farther away or bring people closer. And has it made our relationships better? I'm not sure. Has it cultivated a different culture to where, I could actually consider them, working for some company like SoCalQOL or another business that I have, or to bring them into, my closer knit, uh, you know, group of friends, or are they end up going farther away? It's this weird scenario that I think we always have to juggle with on a daily basis. So this conversation is actually super important because, you know God, I would say 80 to 90% of our relationships with others is the social wellness aspect, is the way you communicate things, the way, you respect each other's time and effort and energy. um yeah, I think it's one thing to always need to be right, or always need to say this one thing, or always have to have the final word. And it's another thing to know, like, seriously, like, where your relationship lies with that person. And you know it's okay to not know. It's okay to kind of trust your instincts, say what you think you're supposed to say, and all of a sudden it comes back to bite you in the ass. That's going to happen. And granted, you don't want to do that with everybody. um, you don't want to always be playing this, Russian roulette, but you're going to realize how much energy you have to invest in certain types of scenarios with other people. Given, maybe you're having, bad sleep issues, or maybe your diet sucks, or you haven't been able to work out a lot. And that's really gonna that actually might bring you into other scenarios where social aspects are more relevant. So, like, for example, you haven't been working out a lot, and or you're having a stressful week at work, and you just want to go grab a beer. Well, a great place to grab a beer is at a bar with other people that you might know. And all of a sudden you're drinking, you're getting casual, and more casual and more casual, and all of a sudden you start spewing out things. And even in those moments too, like, you need to watch, watch what you end up saying, uh if it is about the truth. Because it's one thing to just be super casual with people and cordial. A lot of times we just kind of agree with each other all the time. There's nothing said that's like ever like questionable. It's just like, yeah, like, yeah, we love hanging out. Yeah, we have a good time. Yeah, I love this sport, or I love this, industry. Woohoo. And yeah, so definitely keep all this in the back of your mind, especially as we, enter into the second month of the year. I hope everyone's Valentine's Day went well. My wife and I had a good, like, 2 days, really 2 or 3 days, where we got to, you know, not spend the whole time together, but we were able to use our resources, our finances, and be creative with it, to the point where we had great, social wellness. And so yeah, we feel better than ever. You know, some friction with even our spouse on Valentine's Day. But yeah, I just hope this encourages you to see the people around you as, especially if you want to start spreading positivity, wellness, and a better quality of life to others. You're going to end up having these conversations more and more. So just make sure you know who your audience is. And sometimes the best thing you can do is just be in that person's life, and you might not need to really say anything. They can just literally see you. One of the things I was going to say, and I totally forgot, but this is a great way to close, is, at the least, set an example. At the least, if you know someone has a substance abuse problem or is bad at school or, isn't a hard worker, be those things in their life. Tell, don't have a drink when you're around them. Um, I can't remember the second one I said, but be a hard worker, or talk about, what you're able to accomplish because you had higher standards and just things like that. And just be that person and even promote it on social media. I can't tell you guys enough at how many times I've had conversations with people that I'd not in a million years think I was going to have a conversation about doing push-ups or pull-ups or exercise or just environmental wellness, with those, but they've seen me online and my own personal brand promoting that type of active lifestyle, and it's actually got them excited about it. And I was like, that's super cool. Like, that just totally made me shift my perspective on how important it is to set an example. And granted, I was being consistent with it too. I mean, we're talking 2 or 3 times a day for weeks that this was going on, and it took that amount of time and that amount of energy and content to let me have those conversations with people, because a lot of people don't go on social media every day. So if you're not consistently bringing out that type of material, odds are, you're not going to communicate that to those around you. And that's last thing I'll say is, if you set the example and people can trust you and they want to have that type of social wellness with you, it could lead to business, could lead to extra income and extra opportunities you didn't even know that were available to you. And so if that's any reason to get better at social wellness, I don't know what is. But yeah, guys, appreciate all of you. Once again, I hope that Valentine's Day weekend went well, is going well, and will finish off strong tomorrow. And yeah, everyone have a great rest of your weekend. We will see you later.